amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. Are we living too long? Back in the old days, our lifespan was less than half it is now. In fact, once when you saw a death notice in the paper for someone who had died at 72, you thought they had had a good innings. But now, with David Attenborough reaching the ripe old age of 100, and my own mother dying at 98, we expect to live much longer. But is that a good thing? In David's case, he looks vigorous and sprightly as a man 20 years younger, and his brain is obviously as good as it was when he first started his career. With my own mother, her brain was also brilliant, but her body had let her down, and she spent her last years in a nursing home. Dementia seems to have tripled in recent times, but is that also a result of our long lifespan? Well, my guest today, Lucinda Holdforth, has written a book called Going On and On about this very subject. Welcome, Lucinda.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, Lucinda, I believe your own parents had a long time of ill health before they died, and a lot of their care fell onto your own shoulders. You say, how hard it was to watch their decline, as it is to watch vigorous people decline, isn't it? But was that one of the reasons you decided to write this book?
Partly, Rosemary, but also really because of the experiences I saw other women I know going through. So in my case, my parents died, each of them at 90. And yes, they had they went through what is now a fairly common process of decline.
Right.
A fall here and a fall there. So we went from crisis to crisis for a period. And then my father had all sorts of ailments that were treated. And then that long last period in aged care.
Yeah.
And what I experienced was it wasn't just time, it was an administrative burden. There's a huge kind of financial administrative task helping your parents move into that final phase of life. Yeah, it is. And the health system doesn't help. And it's all extraordinarily complex.
Yes.
And even once they were in aged care, you need to be their advocate. You need to be there making sure everything's okay. And you also are expected and do take them to all the sort of medical appointments and so on. Now, in my case, it wasn't particularly hard because I don't have kids.
Right.
So I have work and life. But I was in a fortunate position compared to many other women I know, and they now call themselves the sandwich generation, women bringing up their kids and in some cases even their grandkids, as well as working, as well as trying to stay healthy themselves. And so that was the impetus for the book. I thought, well, everywhere I look, I see this, another magazine article or story about how to live forever.
Yes.
We've got the tech bros talking about it. When what I know the reality is that people still age, still decline and still die, but it's exactly as you say, it's an extenuated period now, and that is a massive change.
Exactly. We can't all be David Attenboroughs of this world, unfortunately.
I know he is an extraordinary exception, isn't he?
Yeah.
And go him.
He certainly is. I know we talked a little bit before. Why are we living longer? But I am a prime example, and I think you said it happened in your life as well, but I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, which our listeners know 4 years ago. Now, in the old days, I would be gone. In fact, I thought I was gone, but I would have been gone. But with the wonders of modern medicine, here I am, feeling wonderful, living life to the fullest, and in my 80th year. So it is a changed world, isn't it, to what it used to be?
It is a changed world, and it's we're so lucky here in Australia, aren't we? You look at the world and we have this first-class medical system, and we have all the other benefits of our society which help us, which peace, prosperity, amazing public health. So we are a country that does vaccines.
Yes.
We are still sane, we follow the science, we have an excellent medical system. So we're tremendously fortunate in that regard. And in fact, Australia is one of the top normally now just in the top 10 countries in the world for longevity.
Right.
So at one level, that's a really great statistic, and it's a tribute to our medical system and all kinds of things. But there are two other statistics that I came across that are very important to kind of assimilate. The first is that we are second only to the United States for the interval of time spent in ill health at the end of life.
All right.
12 years on average.
Right.
So that explains why there's a difference between, in my parents' earlier day, my grandparents' day, people would always talk about, oh, just drop off the perch.
Yes.
And people did.
Yeah.
They had a heart attack and died.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's a really big shift, and that is where this big caring burden comes in. But that's not the only factor. The other factor is this appalling statistic, which is that 1 in 12 Australians over the age of 65 has dementia.
Yes.
And that complicates everything. So that is where I see this challenge for us as a society to kind of face up to this,
Yes.
enormous challenge, really, for those who are older and getting older, and what happens to them, for their loved ones who are caring for them, for people who are working, who are thinking, well, if I retire, I won't have enough money to live,
Yes.
to survive for the rest of my life. And then for young people coming up, we're going to have to spend something like 40% of future additional budget spending till 2063 on ageing, on the sort of measures around ageing, like the pension,
yes,
health and aged care, end of life care. So it's big.
It is huge. And I actually had a gentleman, a professor from the Brain Institute on not long ago. And I said to him, why is there so much dementia? I mean, it can't be, purely that we're living too long, because there is obviously quite a bit of early onset dementia. Now, sadly, I said to him, look, I do crosswords, Wordle, Sudoku, and other brain, exercise. He said it doesn't make the slightest difference unless you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, well, that's good for your health. But dementia is pretty much in our genes, he said, which I must admit destroyed my perception of it.
Isn't it? Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing for me to know too, Rosemary. I mean, yes, I've wondered why is it, and I think it is just that, not that long ago, there weren't that many people living over 65, as you say. Someone
Yes.
died in their 70s, early 70s, that was considered a good innings, absolutely. So, gosh, it's a challenge, isn't it?
It's a
big
challenge.
Conceptual challenge, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And my brother, sadly, his wife has had dementia for quite a time, and she has now gone into a nursing home. But it did come on very early, and it's made life difficult.
It's the saddest thing in the world.
Yeah, she's very happy, and she's been cared for beautifully. But it was for many, many years a huge burden on my brother, as it often is on the carer. Which brings me to another thing, Lucinda. I mean, you said in your book you wondered if your own parents perhaps should have been able to sort of enjoy their old life a little bit more, rather than sort of succumbing to every test imaginable in order to keep alive. Because so much of old age isn't it, going from one appointment to another, and as we have mentioned, often involving busy children having to ferry parents around.
That is a conundrum that has perplexed me whilst I was writing this book and since. And since I've written the book, I've had a chance to talk with some doctors and medical professionals. The fact is, we have terrible overservicing in this country of older Australians.
Right.
And my poor mother, anytime something went wrong, a blood test,
yes.
horrible for someone old and frail, or another bone scan or another CT scan. What I gathered, it was kind of as if they weren't looking at the whole person when they looked at her.
Right.
They were doing the sort of tests you would do on someone maybe 15 years younger. And it was quite clear she wasn't asking for that stuff. She probably wanted what they call palliative care.
Yes.
People think, oh, that just means you're going to die. It means you'll be comfortable. That's what it means, to palliate your suffering. So I watched that and I thought, well, why do they do that? I think there's a sort of conceptual issue. Our doctors think that it's life at all costs. That's their job.
Yes.
Keep us alive. And there's a great American doctor called Dr. Atul Gawande. I highly recommend his book, Being Mortal.
Right.
And he talks about this in America and says, we should change the model to live well and die well too, as our sort of ethical model for the medical system.
Right.
And what that means is letting patients decide what they want.
Yes.
Giving patients more autonomy and choice and confidence.
If they don't but Lucinda, if they don't have dementia, because that's the problem, isn't it? If they do have dementia, they're not able to.
No, but even in the case of my parents, I mean, my father, I think, had dementia at the end, but not my mum. But they were definitely of a generation that deferred to doctors as gods.
Yes.
You know, if the doctor says you must do this, then off you go.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. And I have enormous respect for the medical profession too. And we do have a first-rate one. But there is a point at which we should be able to have a discussion with the doctor and they say, what is important to you? And I might say, when I'm not much older than now, you know, I just want to be comfortable. I want to be at home reading a book, not going for more tests.
Exactly.
And like you, I've had cancer. I've had heart operations. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals.
Right.
It's very interfering with your state of mind, with your placidity, with your happiness. I'm lucky I'm well now. But in a few years, will I want that? I don't know.
Look, in contrast to what we're talking about, your Nana. Now, you said she embraced life on a property and letting life pretty much take its course. She sounds as though she had it under control.
She had it under control, my Nana. So she had a property in a town outside a town called Coonabarabran in Western New South Wales, not very big. Right. And their farmhouse had all these bits, sort of lean-to bits added on to kind of fill up the rest of the family. And we would all pile in there at Christmas. There was still a huge fireplace in the kitchen. Can you believe? And she had a little kind of farm gate. So you'd pull up in the car, the big long drive from town, from Sydney. And she'd be there waiting there and she would have a coloured frock on and a big swipe of red lipstick and dyed red hair. The adults would go in and have a whiskey to sort of get them settled after their arrival in the good room. Right. There were lots of cigarettes smoking in those days. The children were taken out to look at the chickens and the lambs and all the animals. And she played the piano and she embodied aging. To me, she embodied as she was this as a maternal figure. She wasn't doing what I see so many women, and I understand why doing now, trying to kind of defy age, trying to look younger and spending fortunes on their appearance and things. She was living in her frame, understanding her beautiful place in the family.
Lovely.
In the family story, you know.
Yes.
And
how old was she when she died, Lucinda?
She wasn't, look, I don't know. I was 15. I was trying to remember. She was maybe either late 60s or very early 70s. Right. So considered young now.
Yes.
And she just came down to, I don't even know what the operation was, you know. My mother didn't tell me. So I just remember she came down to Sydney to the hospital and she had an operation and died. And then that's, as we know, the medical system has transformed since then at treating people. So
exactly, she probably would have lived longer in this day and age.
Definitely, absolutely, she would have. Yeah, and I just think about her and I think, oh, what does it feel like now to be a woman aging in our society? And
well, it's hard to tell what people are aging. Actually, we were laughing, hilariously laughing, because we put a thing on Reading Radio about my chat show, and Chris here, the station manager, had put up a photo of whatever, which was obviously AI generated of me. Look, it was wonderful. I looked about 20. I didn't have a wrinkle, but it didn't look like me at all, and there's so many people now that are like that. You literally cannot tell whether, it is the real person or, everybody starts to look a little bit alike. But we'll come back to that because you're listening to Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald. My guest today is Lucinda Holdforth, who has written a number of books, including Going On and On, which we are discussing today. Lucinda, that we retire too early? I mean, many brilliant minds are retired, and far too often, as I've seen, those minds are now absolutely focused on their own health, their bodies, and in many cases on body corporates. I mean, how many disputes in large building body, corporates are caused by retired, really
that is
intelligent
hilarious.
people that just don't have enough to occupy their minds because they've retired too early.
Well, I think, gosh, it's so this is another area that I think as a society we need to discuss. I guess I have two ideas, I guess, that sit in my head, which may be contradictory and which, I think we need to puzzle out as a community. One is embracing the full talents of our citizens for as long as they are able and wish to contribute.
Right.
So when you're talking about fine minds, reduced to the strata warfare,
yes,
that might be an example. And I think in those cases, we maybe need to rethink what retirement means and maybe more definitively what leisure means, because retirement means leisure.
Yes.
So what do we do in leisure? Now, Cicero and the philosophers said, you get into your garden, you cultivate your vines, you give wisdom to the young. He wrote books, and mind you, he was always hoping for a political comeback. So he wasn't a man that was necessarily happy with being in retirement, but he was in retirement, and that's how he dealt with it. Right. So I think we have this mistaken idea that retirement is somehow like a death. I'm retired, I've gone.
And you'll wait around to die, whereas you could start a new career virtually.
Exactly. And that's not what's happening now. So we need to think about how people can enjoy and be productive in those years. And there is a fair bit of work going on. And I think we need to think maybe more about how people can contribute their talents. But there's another area that I think is important to recognise too. In some fields of our society, especially in top corporate businesses, we have board directors who hang around for 1,000,000 years and there's not renewal.
Yeah.
So I think for those in really big leadership roles, it's absolutely appropriate to retire in a timely manner and to pass on.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And we don't have that. And I think there's a lot of complaining and perhaps justifiably that we as a country are not as productive as we should be.
Yeah.
And I look at the big corporations and their answer is just to sack a whole lot of people.
Right.
And I think maybe what you need is young people running it a bit more.
Yeah.
With
and
new
young
ideas
people on
and
board.
new energy. And yeah, absolutely on boards. And we haven't done that.
No. I know in Tasmania, where I lived for nearly 40 years, if you were on one board, you'd be asked to go on another and another and another. It wasn't opened up to other younger people coming up, which it should. Which brings me to my next sort of discussion, which is there is quite a little bit going on at the moment. The young versus the old. Will we get to the stage where the old are too scared to go out? I know. But the older generation, on the whole, have worked damn hard, there's no doubt, to get where we are. And in many cases, including ours, I like to say, have helped their children and grandchildren, get into property. Without that help, they would find it much harder. But, as we've just said, at some stage, we really need to hand the reins over, don't we?
Yes, we certainly do. But I think the sort of larger question is, for those of us who've lived our fantastic Australian lives, which we're lucky enough to have, and yes, worked hard and achieved a lot, I think the satisfaction of old age and that period when you start to think about your legacy, children and grandchildren, is thinking about not just their individual circumstances, but the kind of Australia that they will inherit. And that's just as important as their individual circumstances. We look around the world where there's great wealth inequality and disparity of power. They are very unhappy societies. So my concern about that is that, and that's why, the government is talking about intergenerational issues, because we risk leaving Australia a much more unfair society than we've benefited from. So my dad was a butcher. I went to they scraped together for a private school for me, but I had free education at university. they had all sorts of graduate intakes in the big government agencies and big companies.
Right.
There was a wealth of opportunity for me to go into, and that meant that my background wasn't a barrier to where I went.
Right.
Now I fear that there is going to be more and more of that divide. Mm-hmm. And I don't really want to leave an Australia that's an unequal place. I think that's going to be, for the grandchildren in my life and the niece and nephew, I want them to live in a society that's fair and equal, as Australia has always been, with a fair go.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, now we come to a contentious issue, which a lot of people have talked about. There's the voluntary assisted dying. I mean, we talked a little bit about it before, but do you think people should be encouraged to take advantage of this? I mean, but you run the risk, don't you, so much of people feeling guilty for living into old age and sort of thinking, oh, gosh, should I pull the plug? And if they do decide to pull the plug, how easy is it to do it? I mean, Dawn French has now just written a novel called Enough. I haven't had a chance to read it, but a girlfriend just told me about it this morning, and I think that's about a family where the mother decides she's had enough. I haven't got into it to know whether she was ill or not, but she'd had enough and she was only 68, and she brought them all together and said it was her last day. Of course, the family was devastated. But what do you feel about sort of voluntary assisted dying and how it should be used?
Yes, look, it's a huge issue, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's one that we're going to want to discuss. And the reason we'll want to discuss it is because our medical system is so good, this is the irony, that it can keep us alive in a poor quality of life for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that was certainly the state with my parents. Now, Dad would have lived forever. He wouldn't have cared how many times he fell over. He would have got back up again.
Yeah.
My mother was bored, actually, at the end.
Yep.
And not bored in a miserable way. It was like, my life is completed. I've completed my life.
Yep.
And she actually said to me, you're going to be fine when I go. And I said, yes, Mum, I will. And it was just a very composed mother that she was waiting. Yes, she was. I think she was waiting to die.
Yep.
Very placidly, very quietly, very beautifully. And so her ending was very peaceful and serene. Now, she was a person of faith.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. So for me and for others, I think it's a different question. So voluntary assisted dying currently, it's different in each state, but you need to have a terminal illness, and aging isn't considered a terminal illness.
No.
So you can't just decide you wish to die because you're 80 and had enough. That's not how it will work, as I understand it. It's extremely difficult to get. There are all kinds of barriers to it. Your advanced care directive is a really useful tool for saying, I don't want treatment. Say you have a fall and you can say, look, I don't want excessive treatment. So that's a sort of a request for palliative care. But the problem with an advanced care directive in Australia currently is that you have to be able to consent right at the end of your life. And if you have dementia, you are not deemed able to consent. So the irony is the people that might most be suitable for that process, like if I become demented, I would like to be able to go. That's what I would like. And I don't want to leave my husband looking after me forever and ever. But that's not a choice that any of us is allowed to make currently. So I'm not advocating for, I hear your concern about people feel obliged to step away, to say, right, I've got to go now.
Yeah.
Look, there are risks in everything, but I think with proper protocols in place, we've had big social change before. When we had abortion legalized in this country, people said, oh my God, the sky will fall in. And the sky did not fall in. And I honestly think that this will be an act of compassion and giving people autonomy and choice towards the end of their lives. And most people wouldn't want to do it.
Control. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the big loss that my dad felt. He hated being out of control, which is why he kept driving far longer than he should have.
Well,
and I completely understand it. So
it's such a loss of independence when you lose your license. I'm sure it is. And look, it is. I mean, none of us get out of here alive. and in my mother's case, as I said, fortunately her brain was brilliant at 98, and she helped me write my memoir, which was terrific. And I'd say something to her or read it out, and she'd say, no, you've got that totally wrong.
Oh, how marvelous!
This is how it happened. But we do want to sort of have some sort of control. And then, of course, the other problem, which I always remember the Queen referred to, is all her friends had died. I mean, you live to a ripe old age, but your wonderful friends that you've had all your life are suddenly popping off the perch.
Oh, the look on my mother's face when she heard about one of her oldest friends dying. Yes. And it was just, she wasn't going to make a fuss about it. She just sort of pressed her lips together, and I could just see memories coming into her mind. And it was, I felt for her so deeply. And I agree, that's a great loss. I just think, having that autonomy just gives you some little bit of control towards the end of your life. Most people wouldn't. I think most people wouldn't take advantage. And that's especially also because if we have proper palliative care, that becomes a sort of natural part of the process. If you're in discomfort, you're unwell, then palliative care may mean that you're very happy to spend a time kind of as an invalid, if you like, but looked after. So we need options. We need to discuss what the options are. That's what I think.
Exactly. Now, look, it has been terrific talking to you, and I want to tell our listeners about your book. It's called Going On and On. It is out now in all bookshops and online, and Lucinda's webpage is Lucinda Holdforth, HOLDFORTH.com. But Lucinda, is your book on audio?
It is on audio. And in fact,
wonderful.
I read the book.
Yeah, so you read the book? Terrific.
I read the book because, it's nice to have, there were some bits I thought, gee, could have done better there.
I think
I'm reading it. It's like, can I rewrite it?
I know, terrifying. And yet I wrote a novel, which fortunately HarperCollins published, but then they got somebody to read it, and she was a lovely English actress. But when she got to the Australian accent, it was appalling. And you sort of think, oh gosh. So, but having control, being able to read it yourself. But I think, like you, I'm sure I would have said, why on earth did I?
Why on
write
earth?
that?
Yes, I had to stop. But it's definitely available, and it's a short book, so it's not too long. It's big ideas.
Yes,
and I encourage people to engage in these conversations with each other, with loved ones, because I think we need to work this out as a society together, and we can't wait for politicians. It's too scary for them to deal with these issues, so we need to talk aloud ourselves.
Some of them are living far too long as well. Winston Churchill was 89, I think, when he's left the House of Commons, and we've got a few of them, but we won't get into that.
We won't get into that, indeed.
No. But look, Lucinda, it's been absolutely wonderful. Again, Lucinda's webpage is lucindaholdforth.com, and her book is Going On and On. And this program has been produced in the studios of 4RPH Reading Radio in Brisbane for syndication around Australia, and will be available on my YouTube channel, Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. But thank you, Lucinda, for being my guest, and thank you, Paul, for producing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.